Welcome back to Cities Decoded, where we break down what happens when artificial intelligence meets the nation's biggest cities. I'm, as always, Sam, your host, and today we have John and Elif with us. Let's do quick intros, John, and then Elif. Do you guys want to just quickly identify who you guys are?
Yeah, of course. I'll kick it off. My name is Jonathan. I work at a company called Contra. It's a freelance marketplace that's commission-free. Part of my role is I reach out to a lot of the tools that our freelancers are using, and so part of doing that and part of just, I guess, my way of interjecting myself in the tech scene is going to all these incredible events in New York City. And through that, I've really got to get to know the New York City community, the tech community, and all these incredible events. And so that's where I've really just got to know tech and the community really well, and these different amazing tools that are emerging, especially with AI. And it's also how I met Sam. And so, very grateful to be on the podcast today.
Yes, welcome back, John. And you do go to many events, which we'll be getting into. Elif, do you want to reintroduce yourself as well? People should be familiar, though, at this point.
Elif over here. I live in Washington, D.C. I have met Sam when he was still in Washington, D.C. We were hosting events for the AI Collective. I serve the D.C. community as the co-lead of AI Collective's D.C. chapter. My day job is to bring AI into the knowledge management systems of a very big financial company. But at night, I work with more fun people like Sam.
Hey, there's plenty of fun people at the place you work, I'm sure. Awesome. Yes. Well, thank you guys for being here. Today, we want to talk about the state of the New York tech community. Elif, you have been to New York before and seen the tech communities and probably will be coming back in the future. John, you are quite embedded in the New York tech communities. I would put myself somewhere in between. But let's first start by just talking about an unforced error we made this week. Again, this is a complete ripoff of an unforced error segment of the tennis podcast that I like called the Players Box. But for people who don't know, in tennis, an unforced error is when you make an error that was avoidable. So applying that to your life as a human, always good to think about what could have been done differently. So do we want to do Elif and then John, and then I will chime in too. What is an unforced error this week that you guys have made?
I thought about it. So an error that I made this week. So I have two close friends, three of us, we wanted to do a workshop for people who are still using AI with just chat interface, and we wanted to help them move past that and become more familiar with cloud co-work or more agentic systems. And we wanted to set a workshop for it, and we were expecting a lot of people to sign up. But we forgot that in American culture, especially in Washington, D.C., people book their calendars 3 weeks in advance. So we posted this 3 days before the event. and we were like, why aren't people showing up? And then we realized that, we really need to put things in advance. So that was my error. Completely avoidable, but well, you learn. You make a mistake and you learn.
Yes. Were you able to still get a decent show up? Was the event still a success?
We postponed it. We were like, you know what? Let's just postpone it. Let's do it right. Learn from our mistakes. So we'll do it in a month.
Okay, awesome. Been there, that's for sure. John, what's your unforced error for the week?
Totally hear where you're coming from, Elif, by the way. I know I'm more of like a week ahead person, or like the week of. And so 3 weeks ahead is a little wild for me. I'm from Canada originally, so maybe that's a different culture from America. My unforced error for the week was, I think, wearing myself a little too thin with some of these events. Sometimes I press reserve for all of these things. I try to make every one, and sometimes I try to just go from all different types of parts of the city and make every single one. But I think it's better just to kind of recollect myself, figure out what I think resonates most with me and would be most advantage for myself going to it and get the most out of it, and maybe going to 1 or 2 as opposed to trying to wear myself thin going to 3 or 4 in the night.
Yeah, was this like a multiple night thing, or was there a specific night this week? Because I feel like you do go to a lot of events in general, so I'm curious how many events there were.
There was one where it was like, I had to work that day, plus I then had to go to this Magnific event. There was a WordPress event after. It was an AI/dev/AI NYC event at the WordPress office, and then there was another Super Connector event after. And so it was more like I was just trying to go to these places just to go and like check it off as like a box. But instead, I should have just realized, okay, the first one and the last one are probably going to be the most advantageous to me. And I shouldn't just try to wear myself out and actually enjoy those 2 while I'm actually there instead of worrying about bouncing around.
Yeah, also something that I think we can all probably relate to. I will join the event themes for Unforced Errors. So I was going to host a live event on Thursday, but basically I don't think I thought about it much after I scheduled it. It was because the podcast, not this one, but also one I host, is currently nominated for an award, guys. So it closes tomorrow, but you can vote for Mindful Notions by Sam H. Lee to potentially win an award later this week. Details will be in the description. Will take less than a minute. But I had been thinking about ways to promote the podcast, and I originally was going to have Elif come up to New York and John also be there. Elif was unable to come up to New York, and I think I should have been more direct with people who could have helped me plan it, where I'm just like, I need this from you. But instead, I did not. So I think don't plan an event, guys, if you can't spend the time or like the necessary time for it. Because I think, unlike content, it doesn't all just fall into place if you just like, that's how I felt with content. Sometimes you just like put the live on the schedule or put the episode on the schedule and you figure everything else out. But the events, not so much. So we're all learning. All right. So let's talk about the New York tech community. I think it's something that a lot of people have experienced. But maybe we'll start with you, John. How do you feel like the New York tech community is different from other places? I know I've asked you this before, but now that we're a few more months into 2026, I'm curious how you see it either still being different from other places or maybe some ways that it's gotten more similar to other places you've seen. But yeah, let's just catch people up. May 2026. How is the state of the New York tech community?
Yeah, I think it's definitely picking up right now. I can only really compare it to Toronto, which is where I'm from, and then also SF, where I've been once too. But I'm still pro New York over everything, even though I don't have too much context on the other cities. I think it's great. I think it's an amazing place to be, especially for people in all different industries. So, for an event that's listed on Luma, you can see people coming in from, architecture or fashion or any different type of industries trying to learn more about tech and what's emerging, along with the people who are deeply embedded in the space and really in the eye of the storm. I think it's great too because you learn about different releases in real time. So, like for instance, with that Magnific event that I went to, the day before, they had a major rebrand. Their name was Free Pick for about like 5 or 6 years before that, and had this major launch behind it. So it was great to go to that event, talk about the new features that are rolling out, who was building it, who was marketing it with the actual people who were doing it, and then talk to other people who are about to use or going to use Magnific, want to use Magnific, or are already using that, and all the like agencies and freelancers who are really embedded to the creative AI space. So that's something that's just one example that you can find just on Luma for free, right? And so there's that. There's community events. There's events of just getting to know other people in the space, and that's what's just so amazing about being in NYC is there's just a variety of different events you can go to, as opposed to, I'd imagine SF, you'd probably go to a tech event and have it be a little bit more technical, just because of the people who are there are a little bit more senior into their role, who have been a part of tech for a longer period of time, as opposed to those people who are just trying to break in.
Yeah, I will also say in SF, you run into the same people over and over again. It's like a quite small tech community, I would say, or I would say everyone has their niche a bit more, versus I feel like in New York, I don't think I've been to an event where there isn't one person who is visiting, like who isn't based in New York, where they're like, I'm coming in from DC, or I like flew in from Charlotte, North Carolina, or Florida. Like I think there are a lot of, and like maybe something it's just for that event. Like there are a lot of people who come just for some of these events. And
Yeah.
I think it's crazy to me as someone who like lives here, because maybe at a different state of my life, I would do that too. But I think that's also something I picked up on. Like, I don't think I've been to an event, and also like I don't see the same people at every event. I don't think. Well, me and John haven't gone to an event together in a while, but like I don't think, even though me and John both go to it, yeah, no, it'll happen. But I think the likelihood of you like seeing the same people, unless you're going to as many events as someone like John, I think is still quite low, which probably speaks more to the city itself. Elif, you have seen some of the New York Tech events. What have been your impressions so far? You wrote about one about every a few months ago as well. So what have been your impressions as someone traveling in?
I am one of those people who traveled to New York to go to an event, which is excellent. I'm so glad I did it. I would agree with both of you that in DC, for example, the tech community is small enough that if you go to 3, 4, 5 events, you kind of run into the same people, which I personally love. That's the beauty. That's what makes that community, in my opinion. That familiarity calms your nervous system, and you start trusting people more. So that repetition I actually enjoy. And agree with what John was saying, that in New York, you find people with backgrounds in architecture and art and I don't know, like all kinds of creative industries that you don't necessarily see it in other places. That's what I love about New York. Like you never know what the person is interested in, and it's such a cross-pollination happens so much more organically than other places.
Yeah, I want to turn it back to John and get your read on the state of interest in tech events in New York, and if it's rising, falling, plateauing. Like we have people like Andrew Young, Brett from Creator NYC, people who are very well versed at this point in hosting events, and generally names people know of when they think of events as well. But in terms of like who you're talking to, John, and maybe yourself as well, do you feel like the interest in tech events is changing right now, or is staying the same based on what you're seeing?
I think just from the amount of events that I'm seeing pop up on Luma within my newsletter, that it's rising. Also, maybe it's just my algorithm as well, but I see more and more people, harping on about the fact that because of AI, it's hard to really tell what's real and what's not. That in real life events will just be super, super valuable, and will be just easier to actually get to know people better, to actually have deals made, whatever you want to get out of an event. It'll be just easier to do in person, and that's something I've come in contact with at some of these events recently. Is people really love getting out of their apartments, their studios, their office, to actually meet people where they are, as opposed to just having that discourse over DMs or Discord, whatever sort of community form that they're using. So I think it's picking up. It's tough just because this winter's been pretty tough when it comes to the weather, and I think that kind of brought things down a little bit. But I'm definitely predicting a good surge of events coming up, especially with Tech Week happening in end of May for Boston and then June for New York. So
yes, agreed.
I'll be in New
And
York.
you'll be in New York for Tech Week. Okay, great. We'll all meet up at one of the events.
three weeks notice.
Yes. This should be enough notice for everyone on this call. Yes, I agree with that. I think also with how AIified job hunting has become, it probably balances out if you go to 3 to 4 high quality tech events versus applying to like 50 to 100 job applications. I mean, it varies by role, but I still see a lot of young people who are in that mindset of just apply online, and it sucks because I'm sure 80% of what they're sending out does not get read or reviewed by a human reviewer and just gets automatically AI'd away, and that's not hyperbole. I know there's stats behind that. So I wonder if at some point there will be studies done to show that if you go to X amount of like in-person events, the probability of you making high quality connections is probably at least on par with applying to X amount of jobs. Do you guys also agree with that?
1,000%. It was something that I was talking to a new grad about recently was, hey man, like I've been going to a lot of these events recently, and you can really get in touch with somebody who is a decision maker on that team. So like a CMO, head of growth, or somebody who's on the team, maybe a recruiter as well. And I think it's so much easier to get to know them better in person, see what the role actually is for you, but also for them to get to know you better as well and have that relationship to potentially actually start working with them. That's even something I didn't think about originally when even I started this podcast today. Is the way you get out of these events is a huge thing. Is potentially working with that team one day. And I think that's just a great way of getting to know them, from them talking about their tool, but also getting the chance to actually talk to them face to face. And it's something I actually experienced a couple of weeks ago at, I won't say the actual tool name, but they had a breakfast for people to come in and talk to the hiring managers, the recruiters there, talk to the other candidates as well, and what their experience in the market as well. I think that just bred such a great conversation around tech, potentially working at that company, if they would want to work for that manager, hearing about those other positions, people who are working that position too. And so, such a great opportunity. I always recommend to people, like, fly into a place like New York or SF and just go to these events, and it'll potentially get you like an incredible role.
Yeah, Elif, is that something you've seen as well?
I'll tell you one thing. I've never done an online application in my life.
Wow.
I just showed up.
Wow.
Because I realized that very early on that a lot of these roles are online, but they already know who they're going to hire. They have to put it. They have to put it out there to be fair and all that jazz. But that's actually how I got my job, my current job in Washington, D.C. I booked a one-way ticket from Istanbul, Turkey, came on a tourist visa, and started knocking doors. I printed my CV, sat down in the cafeteria of where I work today, and I started giving it to random people every single day for 4 months. And after 4 months, somebody picked it up, and they're like, yeah, you're hired. Start next week. So I would recommend this to everyone, every young person who is just graduating and having anxiety around finding a job. Just show up to the place where you want to work at, meet the team, see the vibe. See if you actually vibe with the team, because that's going to be your life day to day. You're going to spend more time with your team members than your family, and just show your worth, show your value, show your interest, ask the questions that you want to ask in person, and that there's nothing compared to that.
Yeah, I agree. I also think it comes at a fun time where I see more reports about young people's social skills atrophying because they're talking a lot to AI services, or they came up during the age of COVID, so they were more socially isolated. So I think anything that, especially young people, helping young people to get more, to encourage them to go more into those social spaces, it could be a tech event, it doesn't have to be, is much needed, because especially if you can't do it in New York or even cities like DC, Boston, etc., like you have much lower chances of doing it anywhere else. So I wonder if there's something there where people could be encouraging, like young people could be more encouraging other young people in maybe a more formal capacity, but that is probably a thought for another time. I'm curious if you guys think that these tech events, they've kind of become these third spaces, at least for the two of you and me too, but I feel like my personal interest in tech events is waning right now. I think I need more of a break, but I feel like, would that be fair to call it a third space, like a place that's not your work or your home, but where a lot of your community is? Or do you feel like it represents something else right now in your life, like third space or not, basically? John, any thoughts there?
I would say so. I'd say like it's definitely grown on me the more I would go to events as like a place and like a community that I embedded myself into. Um, it was cool. It's like something that I found to be like a big part of my life after a while, where like it's not just to your point like a part of tech, but like a third space where I can go and talk to other people that are in that world too, or are looking to be in that world, and I can either give my advice to people, or they can give me some sort of advice or information, give some sort of fair exchange, or even find some friendships from it. So I just find it's like super valuable to just be there on all fronts, meet people in person, hear about things emerging in the market, whatever it is. I find just like putting yourself in that space, you can go in for one thing, maybe it is for community or for learning more, and usually you get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other positive things from it. And so it's just about putting yourself in the spot.
Yeah, agreed. I also feel like it's it's a pretty understood idea, but you just never know who you're going to meet. I feel like sometimes you go into these events and you at a certain point have an idea of how it's going to go. Like you'll want to listen to the panel that's going on. You maybe want to talk to like a few people, get a drink, get a picture, and then leave. But I think within those cadences, every event I've been to, there's always something unexpected that happens. Like you meet someone again from Charlotte, North Carolina. Again, there's other places, but I just found it particularly
Why?
funny that somebody came from Charlotte. I was like, oh, like just for literally one night. He's like, yeah, my flight's after this, and I'm like, that's pretty crazy. But maybe one day I'll be doing that, guys. Maybe one day I'll be living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and flying into New York for an event. So I can't say much on that. But that or or like me and John met at a Notion event, and then that could have been nothing, but then turned into this relationship. So I think that the unpredictability is sometimes what keeps me away from tech events, because I'm like, I don't know if I have the bandwidth to like maybe change my life tonight. That's also the other side of it, where I think like kind of have to be ready to like I think what John said earlier, like I think the worst way you go to tech events is like checking off boxes where you're like, okay, like hit this one and then this one and like just make sure I'm going, because I think the longer you stay at an event, usually that's where the serendipity will happen more. Like you just don't know who's going to come in, you don't know who's going to leave, you don't know like what's going to happen. So in that way, it's kind of just like the ethos of going out in general, where I think the idea is like expect an average night, but you never know when it'll be a great night. Again, speaking from personal experience. But Elif, how do you feel about tech events? You also consider them third spaces at this point, because you're very community oriented. So I'm curious to get your thoughts.
It cannot replace an actual third place. Like if you go to Barcelona, if you go to, there are all these parks, you exist in third places. You don't have a goal. You don't have a specific agenda. And on the other hand, when you're going to an event, it's better that you have an agenda. Like if you want to meet people in a specific domain, you're actually going to get more off of that event than to just exist there. So I kind of disagree that it's not a place to just drink tea and yap. It is a place that everybody's there for a reason, and that's how it should be. But I've been more on the organizer side, so I think I need to put myself back in the shoes of a person who just joins with. And if again, I don't think if you don't have an agenda, and the word agenda, kind of the connotation is negative, but I don't mean it in a negative way. I see maybe like a goal. If you don't have a goal in mind, then going to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 events, well, you're gonna burn out.
Completely.
Yeah.
I think definitely you should go in being like, I want to learn X, Y, Z. I want to meet this exact person. But at the same time, once you get those things done, it's not that you shouldn't keep your mind open to other sort of experiences or
Totally.
in between those different goals or whatever. But completely agree. Like for instance, sometimes I potentially want to work with somebody who I know will be at that event. Like I researched them, looked at their LinkedIn, I know they're going to be there, and so I know, okay, no matter what, even though there's all these other distractions, I have to take the time out of this event to go talk to that person. Once that box is checked, and I got what I wanted out of that, then I can experience whether positive things come from this.
100%. I met one of my best friends at a crypto event. Things, magic happens. It really does. And have a goal in mind when you're going to this.
Yeah, very important, definitely. And I think that it's the part that helps when you're organizing the event, because you're already thinking about that, versus I think when you attend it, you definitely need to be a bit more focused. Otherwise, and I think it also shows. I've been to an event last week that had less of a structure, and I think it was still a great time, but I think because my goal there was to learn a bit more about the topic at hand, but the event itself was just getting to know everybody, it felt a bit of a mismatch, because I still had a good time, but I don't feel like I got what I wanted, which was to learn more about the topic that everyone was there to learn about, but they were just learning like peer to peer. So I feel like that definitely makes a lot of sense. Let's move on to something that we've been reading or listening to that's just been provoking thoughts or inspiration. Can be tech related or not tech related, doesn't have to be. We can do Elif, then John, if Elif is ready. I don't know, based on your facial expression, if you're ready.
I'm trying to pick. John, go first.
Oh man, it's tough. I would say, you know what? It was something that actually happened with myself and Sam. Was we had a tech event together, actually, funny enough. And
which one was this?
It was the Contra Notion event. And I knew I'd be doing like some sort of speech for it. And so I did it more like coming from the heart, like talking of what I knew at the top of my head. But it made me think afterwards, like, it'd be nice if I sort of knew how to public speak and like actually do this for real, like have some sort of structured way of presenting myself and like having thoughtful talks to like a crowd. So I'm like 10 pages into this new like Talk Like TED book. I've been watching a little bit of YouTube videos and these little small tips to make yourself a little less nervous before going on too. And so that's something I found helpful. I know it's probably, I hope something will come about in the future where I'll be talking to another crowd. And so I just want to make sure that during that moment I'll be ready.
Nice. What's the name of the book again?
Talk Like TED. I can grab it now.
Talk Like TED.
That's what's going.
That's okay. Okay, Talk Like TED. Got it.
It's about somebody who's interviewed all these different TED Talk people who've done TED Talks, and so she's
got it.
I guess culminated all these different tips from those people.
That's really good.
Got it.
Let us know. Give us the distilled version next time.
Yes. Yes. This will be good for you to read it. Yes. So make sure you read it. Make sure you read the book.
Oh.
Okay.
I'm more of like a YouTube guy though, but I'm trying to read more.
Okay.
Mine is actually similar, or I picked the one that's similar. I've been doing a course on storytelling from a data perspective, but how to integrate data into your stories. And there is this company, and they have an excellent book called Data Story. They have an online course. I took it as part of my day job, but I've been learning how to turn data into stories, and visually, but also in a narrative. Because one thing that I've noticed in my content creation journey is that I don't see people using the wealth of data that's out there in a compelling way. But at work, we always talk with charts. If you don't have if you're not backing up your argument with data, you're basically not saying anything. But in social media, I don't see that happen, and I'm like, I think we should learn a little bit from corporate world there, and I'm hoping to integrate that knowledge into my data creation, hopefully.
Yeah, not that much data going on social media, or the data that's going on. I wouldn't trust it unless I saw it for myself. So yes, very important. I sent this piece to John, actually, that I don't know if you got a chance to see because you didn't respond to the text. That's okay. We've all been there. But it's called Culture Fights Back, The Revolt Against Silicon Valley. It was put out by this guy, Hugo Amsalem, one of those. And it is what it says. Basically, he makes this case of how civilization runs on two engines, technology and culture. One builds the world, which is technology. The other gives it meaning, culture. Sometimes technology leads the dance, and sometimes culture does. And I'll read one more paragraph because I think it succinctly talks about what he's trying to get at here, where he mentions how for the past 50 years, technology led and culture followed. PC, internet, mobile. Silicon Valley was the rebellion, arming us with digital weapons to fight the gatekeepers. But a decade of doom scrolling later, the rebels became the empire. Today, by threatening to replace us with AI, technology is triggering a profound crisis of meaning, because meaning, and then because of that, culture is fighting back. And that is a sentiment me and John were talking about at dinner on Thursday. And it's something I'm really feeling, where I think even a few months ago or a year ago, it felt like people against tech or people against the progression of AI were still very much categorized as like the Luddites of our time, like the people who were against the printing press or automation and factories. But I'm optimistic, where I think we've gotten to a point where the people who naturally have concerns about tech aren't because they don't understand it or because they're coming from maybe a more like non-technical background, but I think it's because it's generally flattening the culture. And I think we now have seen studies of how AI can affect like online discourse, like people who use AI generated responses or read things through AI summaries. They usually are less like opinionated. And in some ways, if you talk about it from a polarization perspective, probably not a bad thing. But if you talk about it from like a human nature point of view, like we need to disagree, or at least like in democratic societies, we need to disagree. We need to understand how to get along with people we disagree with. So I think I said it earlier, but I feel like one reason why my personal interest in tech events is like waning right now is because it doesn't feel like there's that much disagreement. It kind of just feels like people generally are either pro AI or not, or pro AI in this way or anti AI in this way. And I'm more curious to dive into like why culturally it feels like there's such a gap between the progression of AI in the States and people's sentiment towards it. And again, I think at this point it includes people who really understand AI as well. So that's an article that I've been thinking about, but I'll turn it to you guys. Do you also see that gap between how in the States AI is progressing versus general sentiment about it? If not in your like direct circles with this in terms of what you're reading, or do you feel like the gap itself is overstated? Either or, can start with that one.
That's definitely a thoughtful question. I think there's always this sort of like scary narrative that I'm hearing about AI, about how it's just going to take over the internet and people are not going to know what's real or not. Progression where everyone's not going to have a job. I guess most people are having a tough time actually picking up these new AI tools to keep up with the demand to get these like senior software engineering jobs. The fact that it's taking over, I guess, discourse in the way that people find it hard to communicate online and to have an actual opinion. I think that's mainly what I'm hearing right now. And so I guess, was your question more like, what was sort of?
Yeah, the question's like, do you feel like that gap between the way the tech is progressing and people's understanding and resulting negative views on that tech is overstated, or do you think it's correct that there is a pretty big gap between those two? Like, for example, Time put out a feature article a few months ago about these people who like hate AI, and it's like spanning the spectrum of demographics of like different identities, different backgrounds, and all of this like really negative sentiment against AI. It's something that Notion has picked up as well, which is why our latest campaign about thinking together has been about humans working together. So basically, if somebody were to ask you about the sentiment about AI in the US, do you feel like it's over? Like, do you think the negative sentiment is hype, or do you think it's reality?
I think like the negative sentiment is probably just hype right now. I think a lot of people are just like scared about where it's gonna go, but in reality, like no matter what, people are gonna be excited also about the progression of AI and like where it can take us from a production lens. There's always gonna be that conflict of like, okay, are we going to put these barriers on AI and try to slow it down and regulate it before it becomes a little bit too much, or are we just going to let it sort of like fly and ride this huge AI wave and see where it can take us? That's sort of, I guess, where I'm seeing the discourse right now. I'm curious, like, what do you think, Elif?
Yeah. I'll actually tie this back to what I said I would like to talk about last week, which is Google DeepMind hiring a philosopher, and Anthropic already has resident philosophers. I think philosophy's return is a symptom of engineering hitting a wall, because we tend to think that people who build these systems naturally understand the effects of it. But building a nuclear reactor is a different thing than knowing its impact on geopolitics. And engineering can answer questions like, what is the more accurate data sets that you need. But now I think we've came to a point where people started asking questions like, okay, what does it mean when everybody consults the same AI to answer a financial advisory question? If every single firm is using the same model, what does it mean for businesses? And these are not technical questions. These are philosophical questions that requires humanities background, requires people to think about the impact that these technologies have on us. In the same way, knowing how a phone circuit works doesn't mean you know how the impact of phones had on our attentions. So I think naturally the conversation became more open to the public, because we are hitting a point of where engineering cannot answer these questions anymore.
So, do you feel like these philosophers also need to have a technical background, though? I feel like that's the demographic Cosmos targets. Like, they're trying to get technical engineers or builders to have more philosophical mind and not so much the other way around. So, even though it requires a different skill set, do you feel like it's better to still have a technical understanding first? Or do you think that there is a space for philosophers who don't have this technical understanding to make like a make a similar impact?
Having a learning, I don't think you need to have it, but you can definitely learn it, and the entry barrier has never been lower. So learning what goes behind the scenes and how these tools are being built is definitely very helpful for you to form your own opinion and have your own discernment on the limitations and benefits of AI. So that's one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about hosting the AI and Mental Health series, where we partnered with a group of therapists, and we're bringing therapists in the same room with AI engineers. And we're showing what goes behind the scenes to people who've never seen a line of code, so that therapists can have their own discernment on when these tools are helpful and when they're not. But you don't have to have a technical background, in the sense that you don't have to know Python anymore. That's irrelevant. But it is obviously very important to know what software engineering means. And that's never been about writing syntax. It's more about finding solutions to problems, and it's a way of thinking. And I would argue that the way that philosophers think is not that different than the way that good software engineers think, but they've never been introduced to each other.
That's interesting. It's more so like at least getting to know how a software engineer works, so that you can understand from that lens when a user of that tool prompts something, what triggers it to have that certain output to give a response to, let's say, a finance question or maybe a therapeutic question.
A prime example is, if you need to understand where data sits, for example. Where does this tool take its data from? and you need to be able to ask the right questions to understand how the system works on a systemic level. But the traditional understanding of a technical background is definitely not necessary to answer the bigger questions around how technology is impacting our way of work, with the way that we give to meaning to our work. So like I ponder around this question a lot. So we are in human in the loop right now, right? But we're delegating more and more work, we're automating more and more work, we're delegating it to AI systems. So what happens to my relationship with work when I become just a checker? And how does that work, how is that work going to give meaning to me? So that's not a question that you need to know R to answer.
Yeah, I mean, the meaning of work is something that first is applicable to like anybody working, but that also is quite subjective as well. Like I do think that it gets into your whole perspective on like what you think work should be, and if you even want, like if you're able to be compensated in a different way, like if you would even want to do work. So I think we can leave that as a thought for next time. Let's wrap up here by saying one thing we look forward to for this week, and just something that's happening that is making you feel excited about the week. So John, then Elif, maybe.
This week, I think all of our team's going to be together in the office, and so I'm always excited when everybody's all in the same place. We don't have to Slack each other and actually come together as a group and just talk about what's new on the roadmap, what's happening right at NYC, how we can come together and I guess come towards our goals in a way that's fun and interactive, as opposed to, again, like talking over Slack. And so that's something I'm pumped about. Also love when it can be really nice out too. We can have time outside. So it's,
Yes,
that's my rose of the week.
yes, Contra Labs, everyone, check it out. Contra Labs. Yes, yes. Okay, Elif.
So this week is going to be a busy week for me. I'm hosting 2 events back to back. On Monday, I'm hosting an event around AI and finance. And on Tuesday, I'm hosting an event around AI in law. And towards the end of the month, I'm hosting the 4th session of AI and mental health series. So one thing that I've been trying to do now that I've hosted a lot of general events, I want to try how it works when we focus on verticals and see if that brings more value to people. So on Monday, we're bringing people from JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and IFC in one room to answer how AI is shifting their work in finance specifically. And my dear friend, Professor Gomez Gillespie, is going to show us what goes under the hood. Again, that's something that I'm very passionate about when I'm hosting these events. I try my best to show some code to people who've never seen a line of code so that they can understand and not be as scared and think that they needed to study software engineering for 4 years to have an opinion about how these things should work. And so it's going to be a busy week, super excited. And it's going to be our first event in law in DC. And DC there are more lawyers than trees in Washington, D.C. So I'm very excited to bring in lawyers and engineers in one room and ask the right questions.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't done a law event yet, but I'm glad it's happening. Okay, good. Excited to hear about it. My voice is quickly being lost, but I'm getting over a cold, so I'm excited for that to happen whenever it does this week. And then going to London for the podcast, and then also doing a Notion community event, and then taking the weekend off in London. So very excited to just take a break in all the ways, and excited for everyone to report back. All right, thanks guys for joining. This has been Cities Decoded. If you are listening or watching on Substack, please consider recommending us. It really helps us reach new audiences. If you are listening or watching on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify, consider giving us a 5-star rating, liking, or subscribing. Again, helps us reach new audiences. And until next time, we'll see you then. Any last words from either of you?
No,
See you in New York in the 4th or 1st of June.
Yes, we will meet up in New York. Yes. See us in person. Okay. Bye, guys.